Welcome to episode 18 of This Week in College Hockey. We have one more weekend of regular season action across the nation in college hockey, guys, and it is going to be a doozy. A lot of clinching scenarios on the line. Still not sure who three of the conferences that are ending this weekend, who their champions will be, so that will all be up for grabs this weekend. I'm Dan Schulman. Joining me today is Jake Reiser and Jordan Tebow. And guys, it's going to be an exciting final weekend.
Absolutely. There's a lot at stake for almost every team you could think of. There's divisions at stake. There's playoff seeding at stake. There's a lot riding on the line. And for here at BU, it's a tough weekend, but it's going to be a lot of fun regardless of what team you root for in the college hockey world.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough weekend for basically everybody because, you're up against a wall right now. These are the last few games you're going to play in conference, and, you either make yourself a better seed and succeed this weekend, or you take some losses and find yourself lower in the bracket.
Pairwise points, conference standings, all that still to be decided, and it's a crucial final weekend of the regular season across the board. The NCHC and the Big Ten will continue for another week, and then the Big Ten actually for 2 weeks. So not every team heads into the playoffs next weekend, but most of the country will be into the postseason in their respective conference tournaments. But before we get to all that, we'll go through our weekly honors. The team of the week, there was no real surprise or upset this week, but our team of the week, Western Michigan, really proving that they deserve to be in the conversation with all the top dogs in the nation. They're now fifth in the pairwise after a weekend sweep of North Dakota.
You know, right now for the defending champion Fighting Hawks, it's just not looking good. They're playing pretty average hockey. I mean, it's really tough when you don't have a guy like Brock Besser at 100%. He's playing, but he's been injured for most of the season, so we don't have him at 100%. Cam Johnson's playing pretty average hockey at this point. And Ben Blacker for Western Michigan, give him a lot of credit. He made 32 saves in the win on Friday night, and then Saturday night in a 3-2 victory, he made 44 saves. So the offense was clearly there on Saturday night at the very least for North Dakota, but Blacker and Western Michigan just really hung in there, and that's two big wins for them.
Yeah, I mean, a great weekend, and I don't think a lot of people predicted a sweep, but like you said, it's been a tough year for North Dakota, and when you get guys like Matheson, Acapelli from Western Michigan scoring 2 goals in that game on Saturday, and then they took the win 4-2 on that Friday game. It's nowhere but up for Western Michigan right now.
And Sheldon Drees having himself a good game on Friday night. He was the player of the game. I was able to watch the tail end of it on CBS Sports after our early finish against UNH, which we will have Marissa and Jemmy breaking down a little later in the program. But our defensive player of the week now, it kind of stings a little to pick a crosstown rival, but Ryan Ruck of Northeastern, thoroughly deserving of his player of the week, defensive player of the week nominee. He only allowed 1 goal against a very offensively talented UConn team in a weekend sweep for the Northeastern Huskies over the Connecticut Huskies.
It's a big weekend for Northeastern at this point. Right now they sit with 19 points in Hockey East. They're only 3 points behind Vermont, 4 points behind Providence, so there's a lot of leeway right there in between these middle teams, and so for Ryan Ruck to have a good weekend certainly gives Coach Madigan and the Huskies a lot of confidence going into the last week. They play at Maine, at Alphon, which is a really tough place to play, but even still, 4 points could be 4 points, and that's huge in terms of the Hockey East standings for Northeastern.
Yeah, and Northeastern, you talk a lot about their offensive weapons, Zach Aston-Reese, Dylan Secura, Adam Gaudette. They're all in the top 6 in point scoring. But, you don't talk a lot about Ryan Ruck, and that's because, his goals against average has not been stellar this year. He's in the bottom of the league. And, they do let up a lot of goals. They're not the best defense. But, you saw it last year with Northeastern. It's all about timely wins. And, if they can make their way into the Hockey East, second round, who knows where they can go, because they love to feed off that energy that, and they got a good group of guys, not as good as they were last year, but, and like I said, they're letting up, quite a bit of goals this season, but this weekend was a different story.
And they're definitely going to be an easy out, or not an easy out, rather, in Hockey East playoffs. Whoever gets Northeastern is going to be finding themselves in a bit of a frustrating situation because they always tend to get under the skin of the opponents. They're 7th in the nation in team offense, so definitely going to have to be on high alert defensively if you get Northeastern in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's above. They're scoring almost 4 goals a game, 3.69. That's above teams like BU and like we just saw with UNH and Notre Dame and Western Michigan, like we were talking about earlier. So, I mean, Northeastern, not a lot to talk about them this season, but like we said, if Ryan Ruck keeps playing how he is, if their top guys keep going the way they're going, you never know where they could go.
And finally, our offensive players of the week. Kind of hard to pick when you got 3 guys having 4-goal weekends. Rem Pitlick out of the University of Minnesota, the only one of those 3 to have a hat trick. Trent Frederick from the University of Wisconsin, and then Tyler Moy from Harvard University, all with 4-goal weekends in their respective series this week.
I'm going to pick a little bit on Trent Frederick because of his 4-goal weekend and the fact that he's a first-round Boston Bruins draft pick. When he was drafted, there was a lot of shuffling in the Bruins fan nation and a lot of resignation that he was more so like a high-end second-round, mid-second-round type of a pick. So to pick Frederick a little bit ahead of his time felt kind of strange at the time, but he's putting up good numbers this season. He's got 30 points in 22 games. He's the second leading scorer in Wisconsin, right behind Luke Cunnin, who I believe is a Minnesota Wild draft pick. He's doing himself all the favors he can, and to have 2 goals each game against Michigan this weekend for a 4-goal weekend is certainly impressive for him.
Yeah, definitely. And Cunnin is a wild pick. You were right on that one. But, and we talked about him a lot this season. I think he was an offensive player of the week 2 weeks ago. And he's impressed us, like you just said, Jake. A lot of Bruins fans kind of nervous about the draft pick. But, I mean, it looks like it's panning out for them. And, a lot of the picks that they've had in college hockey this year, we're going to get into Anders Bjork later on. Charlie McAvoy. A lot of the Bruins picks have been panning out. And they got some other in the Euro leagues like Jake Zaboral. So, Trent Frederick, our offensive player of the week.
And that will conclude the weekly honor roll. We'll roll right now into our weekend roundup with a couple of talking points. But first, we do want to mention that there was an NCAA record set. It was Otta Tolvanen, the goaltender for Northern Michigan, who we have raved about over the past couple of weeks.
You have raved about that.
Basically.
Over the past few years.
Yeah.
Honestly.
With 5 consecutive shutouts, tying Blaine Locker of Lake Superior State in 1993-94. He was about 37 minutes shy of the all-time minutes record after he conceded a goal just 3 minutes and 26 seconds into their Friday night loss, 5-3 to Minnesota State, then losing the second night 7-4 to Minnesota State, but still making 32 saves on Friday and 41 saves on Saturday. Some stellar performances from Otta Tolvanen, and Jake, as you said before, he only allowed 3 goals in a month.
Yeah, it's just incredible when you put it on a calendar and go, oh, there goes another week where he didn't give up a goal, and another week, and another week. You feel like DJ Khaled, another one.
Another one. And it made picking the defensive player of the week a little more difficult this week because you didn't have Otta Tolvanen to rely upon, though.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said before, we've been talking about Tolvanen for a while now, and the thing that jumps out for me is, his shutouts this year put him up in the category with guys like Michael Bitzer, Cal Peterson. They all have 5 shutouts on the season, but his save percentage and goals against average really take a dip because this Northern Michigan team just hasn't been in a lot of games, and and like you said, he hasn't been getting the recognition he needs, and Jake had alluded to it earlier, maybe getting some looks, some NHL looks. He's a sophomore right now, but and he's 10-19 this season, so he's been playing his butt off, but the guys in front of him just need to step up if they want to do something in their own conference's playoffs if they make it.
And Otta Tolvanen showed that he can be an elite goaltender, and if Northern Michigan can recruit a good defense and put a good back 6 in front of them, then you could be looking at a team that if their recruits all pan out and if they do stay together, because there are no draft picks on this team. So if they do pan out, if they continue to improve, and Tolvanen stays hot and continues to be the elite goaltender that he's capable of, you could very well see this Northern Michigan team in contention for the WCHA tournament title in the next couple of seasons.
I mean, you'd think so. If you can get Tolvanen to do some really good things, just keep going the way he's been going and recruit around him, say, Tovanen is our fantastic goaltender, and you can be the defense in front of him, or you can be the offense in front of him. I think that's a great recruiting tool that Northern Michigan is going to have for the next few years.
Yeah, and the one guy that jumps off the page for me on this team is Dominic Shine. He's 18th in goal. He's tied in goal scoring with Tyler Moy and Clayton Keller. So he's one of those guys that can step up in big games. But like we said, if they don't turn it on right now, who knows? They might not even make their own conference playoffs.
And that's exactly what I was just going to say. That you can't really focus on the next next couple of seasons without a Tovanen. You have to focus on making the tournament this year.
Exactly.
And with the WCHA being the only team that eliminates two teams actually before the conference tournament begins, Northern Michigan's in a bit of a bind. They're currently finding themselves as the 8th seed in the conference with 31 points, just 1 point above 9th place Alabama Huntsville. And Northern Michigan got a bit of a tough challenge ahead of them this weekend as they take on Michigan Tech in a home-and-home, while Alabama Huntsville is going to be taking on Bowling Green in Bowling Green, Ohio. So Northern Michigan's going to be looking for some help from Bowling Green. But as for the other team that could be eliminated, Alaska Anchorage, they find themselves 4 points behind Alabama Huntsville, so they need really a miracle. They have to win both games against Alaska Fairbanks this weekend. They need Alabama Huntsville to lose both games. Can't even get 1 point. But realistically, it looks as if Alaska Anchorage is going to be the first team eliminated from the college hockey playoffs.
Frankly, both Alaska teams need a miracle in and of themselves, regardless of what happens with this season. What has been rumored, and I believe confirmed, is that the owner of the Alaska Aces, the ECHL team out in Alaska, they are officially ceasing their operations out there, which is a really big loss for the Alaska Anchorage and Alaska Fairbanks programs, and maybe spells a little bit of doom for those programs if hockey can't survive out there.
As if there wasn't enough doom already with the already proposed talks of either program really ceasing operations. Alaska Anchorage, probably the most likely to be the next college hockey team to become extinct, really, if you want to talk about it. The last one that became extinct, if I can remember back, I think was Wayne State in College Hockey America out of Detroit. But Alaska Anchorage looks like they could be the next team, and it's really a shame, and especially because the whole history with that program and the way they've worked to get to the place where they are now. But it does look as if Alaska Anchorage is going to be the first eliminated. The other team possibly eliminated is really, realistically, I'd say, between Alabama Huntsville and Northern Michigan. Still, Alaska Fairbanks can be eliminated, and Lake Superior State can also be eliminated. Lake State takes on Ferris State at home this weekend. All they'll need is really 2 points, and they'll stay safe. And Alaska Fairbanks against Alaska Anchorage. So really sort of conducive for Alaska Fairbanks to continue to advance, maybe even move up in the standings, but that's going to be difficult with them being 4 points behind 5th place Ferris State.
Oh, and Alabama Huntsville, too. Remember at the beginning of the season when they were our team of the week?
Yeah.
Look at where they've gone so far.
It doesn't look good for Alabama Huntsville or Alaska Anchorage, and that could be your first. Those could be your first two eliminated teams from the college hockey tournament. That conference has already been decided with the regular season champion as Bemidji State. Won it just 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's already been 2 weeks since they clinched the regular season tournament. Just shows how good that program has been this season, especially with Jordan. I'm pretty sure this is your favorite goaltender in college hockey, Michael Bitzer.
Yeah, Bitzer. I mean, we called it out. I think a few of us called it out in our mid-season awards, but Bitzer's just been on fuego this season. And he kind of came out of nowhere, but he just kept playing the way he was playing at the beginning of the season. And right now he's top in goaltending. He's 1.69 goals against average. And save percentage, he's 6th in the country. He's played the most minutes out of any goalie. He's got 5 shutouts. So this kid, he's a junior at Bemidji, but he's turning some heads, and who knows. I got to look up where he's been drafted, but or if he has been. But I mean, if he hasn't,
I don't believe he has been, to be honest with you. But
I don't believe so either.
he's certainly draft worthy. He's shown how good he can be.
Yeah, he hasn't been yet. So I mean, and Bemidji is they've just been reeling this season, and it's mostly because of Michael Bitzer. And you look at their in-conference games, they're 19-5-2. And they already won the conference 2 weeks ago, so it's been an incredible year for Bemidji, and I think they're going to keep rolling.
Really, look right now as to who's going to be eliminated in the WCHA as the conference has already been decided. We move now, though, to the ECAC, where 3 teams are in contention to clinch the regular season title. Cornell in 3rd place, Harvard in 2nd place, and Union atop the standings with 31 points. All 3 teams separated by just 3 points. The clinching scenarios, though, for each team, it does look like Union, they're going to be in for a bit of a struggle. They do have to go to Colgate on Friday night, and then they'll be at Cornell on Saturday night. So everyone's going to be watching that game because it could be a chance for Cornell to win the ECAC, but Harvard also very much in the driver's seat as well, just 1 point behind. So all they need is Union to at least drop 1 point, and Harvard will be able to become the regular season champion. Harvard hosting Clarkson, which should be a win for them, and then against St. Lawrence, which will be a difficult game. But again, Harvard should win both games, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it looks as if the Crimson are going to walk away from this weekend with the ECAC crown.
That's what I'm feeling too. I think that Harvard's got, to me, they've got the best chance. You're right that Union and Colgate is certainly an interesting game. Colgate not too great in the standings right now, but the Cornell game feels like a trap game for me up in Ithaca.
I don't really think it can be a trap game, especially with that team being 3rd in the ECAC and 9th in the pairwise.
I know, but it's still tough either way, that Union being ranked number 1, and yeah, Cornell is pretty close there, but...
I do get what you mean, though,
Right.
because the way that... I think we can remember back to the start of this semester, which now seems like it was last week, but it really was ages ago in the college hockey season when Union came in to play BU at BU, a depleted team with 7 or 8 of its players on national duty, and Union just really fell apart at the end. And the weekend before, they played North Dakota at home, and again, just a team that didn't look up to the test. So you go into a weekend against Colgate, where Colgate's defense is highly regarded. Union's offense is highly regarded, but defense wins championships. So I completely agree with what you say. I think trap game's a different way to put it, but I see what you mean.
That it's gonna be a challenge regardless, but I think it's gonna be more of a challenge than Union is expecting. I think that Cornell is gonna be able to put up some good numbers. I think that they'll end up getting a draw out of it, and that'll give Harvard a clear path to take the ECAC crown.
And, you know, the reason why Harvard's in this spot is because they put up 6 goals in the Beanpot against BU. They do things like that, and they're just a scoring powerhouse. They're number 2 in the nation in goals scored this season.
Yeah, they just casually put up 6 goals against Brown on Saturday.
Exactly, but the thing for me, like, the Beanpot for me wasn't even a competition. I mean, that game was just... I mean, I know BU had the lead in the second period.
And they dominated for the first 10 minutes of that period, too.
But the shot differential was like nothing I've ever seen. It was like if you put a youth hockey team out there against an NHL team, like that episode of South Park.
Yeah.
It was like, seriously, it was like...
I'm not sure if you saw the shot chart
It was
after the first
sad.
period.
Sad.
Harvard attempted
Miserable.
32 shots. BU attempted 4 in the first period.
Miserable.
It was like you drew a bunch of scribbles on one side and just a couple stray dots on the other side.
And that's a BU team that's 13th in the country in scoring, and they have guys like Clayton Keller who did score a beautiful tip in that game. But, you know, back to Harvard, it's not just their offense. They're also only letting up about 2 goals a game, and Merrick Madsen made some incredible saves against BU in that Beanpot game. And, you know, that's what he's been doing all season. The junior is just, you know, he's found himself in you know, the head role of that Harvard team, and he's really carrying them. He's up there in every category for goaltending, and he's another guy who's flying under the radar. But
Yeah, that defense is just something special out there, led by Adam Fox and John Marino and Wiley Sherman, who's probably going to be the Zdeno Chara of the next generation, which is funny considering he's also a Boston Bruins draft pick.
He's also 6'7".
He's incredibly massive, and just this Harvard team in general is so well-rounded that I can't not see them taking it.
I mean, Tyler Moy, Alexander Kerfoot, Shamala. You can go down the line with this team, and
I mean, it is in Union's hands. We have to remember that. If
Yeah.
Union wins both games, conversation over.
And they have who could probably win the Hobie Baker and Mike Vecchione.
But that's Saturday night too, with Harvard hosting St. Lawrence, who both teams with just incredible goaltenders. St. Lawrence with Kyle Hayton, Harvard with Merrick Madsen, and then you got Union heading into Cornell, and Cornell's goaltender Mitch Gillum, who could lead this team to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time. It's going to be highly competitive action in the ECAC on Saturday night. I'm surely definitely going to tune into that. When we get to games of the week at the end of the show, You don't even have to ask me which ones I'm tuning into. It's going to be ECAC for me on Saturday. But, the ECAC currently in Union's control, and Harvard contending strongly, and it's going to all come down to Saturday night's 2 games. Moving on to the Atlantic Hockey Conference, though, where it's only between 2 teams. Canisius, who only has 1 game left, and it's on Thursday against Mercyhurst. And then Air Force, with a 2-game home set against a struggling Sacred Heart team. Air Force sits only 1 point behind Canisius in the standings, so Canisius can enter the weekend 3 points ahead of Air Force, but Air Force, with 2 home games against a weak team, what they'll need is 4 points, and it's very likely that you could see Air Force walk away with this.
I do like Air Force's chances, especially with those games in hand and going up against Sacred Heart, who Sacred Heart, it's not like they're a really bad team, and they have pretty good pieces, at least a little bit in there. Justin Danforth, the senior, being one of them.
Jordan Manello, too.
But, I mean, Air Force has the games in hand, and I really like their chances over Canisius, who, not to say Mercyhurst is a bad team, again, just the games in hand make it tough.
Yeah, and, the reason why I think Canisius has the upper hand is their guy, Charles Williams, or Chuck Williams. You want to call him Chuck Williams, go right ahead. But the kid, he's a senior, and he's really just found himself a new, spotlight. Kind of like Michael Bitzer, just coming out of the woodwork. And, he's number 1 in save percentage. He's number 5 in goals against. He's got a few shutouts. And, Charles Williams is just completely carrying this team. And, I think he gives them the edge over any team just because, he's just a brick wall this season.
Now, for Air Force, this game I think means a lot more than just an Atlantic Hockey Crown. These 2 games, rather, means a lot more than just the Atlantic Hockey Crown. If they win both games and North Dakota loses this weekend or Ohio State loses this weekend, you could see Air Force climb as high as 13th in the pairwise, which means even if they did lose in the Atlantic final to Canisius, they could still be in contention for an at-large bid, which would be incredible for college hockey, just to show the parity and how even it is that you have 2 Atlantic teams making it. Air Force, more than deserving, in my opinion, of an NCAA tournament spot, even if they don't win the Atlantic tournament. You take a look at a team. I mean, it's hard to go 21-8-5. They're doing it with ease right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely incredible. And you're right, we've been talking all year about the parity of college hockey, whether it be the WCHI at one point or the NCHC, and then bringing it back home now with the Atlantic hockey and keeping on the Eastern Seaboard. But there's just so much parity in college hockey, and I think that would be truly deserving and truly representative of this year if 2 Atlantic teams could make it.
And they're a lot like Harvard in the way that they have an even scoring distribution. I mean, just looking down the list, it looks like double figures. Players in double figures of points is in the double figures, the amount. Mm-hmm. You got Jordan Himley leading the way with 28 points, as is Kyle Hawk. Himley with 16 goals, Hawk leading the team with 17 assists. And then in goal, Shane Starrett from Bellingham, Massachusetts, .922 save percentage, 2.13 goals against average, a 24-4 record.
Wow, that's incredible. I think that they've got a really good chance to take the Atlantic Hockey Crown. And then I think if they can get an at-large bid, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah, like you're saying, Starrett, he's been their rocking goal. We've been talking about goalies all day, but you look at guys like Jordan Himley, he's got 16 goals on the season. So, Air Force got a pretty good chance. It's a bummer for them that they haven't done better in conference, and that their 21-8-5 record looks a lot better on paper than Canisius's 18-10-7. So. And who knows what could happen this weekend. It's really just it's going to be a great weekend for hockey, and just going down the line, all these conferences are going to go down the line this weekend.
And then our final conference that we'll be wrapping up this weekend, we'll keep it here at home, Hockey East, which is probably the most wide open of them all. 4 teams can win it coming into the final weekend of the year. Boston College in pole position with 29 points, 2 points ahead of second place BU with 27 points. BU 1 point ahead of third place Notre Dame with 26 points, and Notre Dame 1 point ahead of UMass Lowell with 25 points. 4 teams separated by 4 points, and it's entirely possible we could see UMass Lowell winning the regular season title. If Lowell gets the sweep of Boston College in a home-and-home series this weekend, and BU and Notre Dame split, Lowell's walking away with it.
Yeah, and that could very well happen. I mean, Dan, you were talking to me, I think either yesterday or before the show. You were saying that BC very well could lose both of these games because UMass Lowell has just, they've just come into their own at the end of the season. And I know their 12-7-1 record isn't looking too hot right now, but if they win out and BU splits, like you just said, this is set up perfectly for UMass Lowell. This is exactly what they want. They want to control their own destiny and then, maybe get a little help from BU and Notre Dame. But they can control their own destiny going into the Hockey East playoffs 100% with these two games versus BC.
It's just so up in the air. And frankly, we could toss up any situation between these teams. Both of them could split and nothing would change. BU could win out and the other could split and BU would end up taking it. BU could get swept and drop all the way down to fourth for all we know. There's just so much at stake here, and I can't put together a situation and really definitively say, yeah, I see this team winning Hockey East. There's just too much at stake. All of these teams are way too good for me to count anybody out.
Yeah, and you could even have Providence and Vermont sneak into the top four. They're not in title contention, but they could sneak into the top four and get a bye. BU and BC, the only two to secure a first-round bye so far. So Notre Dame with it all to play for. It would be an interesting scenario, which we'll get to in a few minutes, between BU and Notre Dame that was reminiscent of last year. But UMass Lowell very well could win against a Boston College team that's dropped off, and a Boston College is to miss the regular season championship in Hockey East. They could be looking at a one-way ticket home instead of to the NCAA tournament. And that kind of leads us to our next point quickly, though. The NCAA ice hockey website actually today released their bracketology of where teams would be if the season ended today. Boston College is only in it because they're in first place in Hockey East right now, so they're listed at 15th, the 15th overall seed. The Northeast Regional in Manchester would have number 1 Minnesota taking on Boston College, and that's a rematch of a regular season game we had earlier this year. And then number 2, the number 6 overall seed, the number 2 seed in Manchester, Boston University would take on St. Cloud State. So you have BU and BC currently matched up in the same bracket.
Wow. That'd be really impressive.
That'd be fun.
That'd
be real fun.
Real fun. The last time that happened, I believe, was 2006.
And you know what?
When BC won 6-0.
And it would be really fun for BU fans because BC has just gotten routed by BU this season. It hasn't even been a competition in the games that they've played in. It's honestly kind of sad. And like you said, they could very well not even make the tournament, BC. And we've been talking about it all season. This Jerry York coach team, they just don't look like the same Eagles.
And they won't have a senior next year to lead a team that's going to already have been really depleted.
Yeah, and it's tough because the guys like Colin White and the Fitzgeralds, and goaltender like Joe Wall, on paper they have an incredible team, but they just haven't played well in the games that they've really needed to play well, and fourth in the bean pot is never good either.
And then the other regionals, Providence actually supposed to be in Providence this year, unlike 2 years ago, but that's another story for another time. Don't get me heated on that one. I know you guys are probably heated about the same thing. But Harvard, the number 1 seed in the Providence East Regional, taking on Air Force in the first round, and then Union, the number 2 overall seed, taking on Providence in the first round. That's how it would be. The Midwest Regional.
Remember, it's the first time in the last few weeks we've been kind of going through these that Providence has been in Providence.
Yeah, and they actually do deserve it this year, and it's perfectly placed. Midwest Cincinnati Regional, the number 1 seed. Minnesota Duluth, who's the number 2 overall seed, taking on Ohio State, kind of an unfair draw for Duluth. And then Western Michigan taking on Penn State. So all teams from the Midwest in the Midwest Regional. Then the West Regional with the number 1 overall seed, Denver, taking on Bemidji State. And the 8th overall seed, 2 in the West Regional, UMass Lowell, being made to travel out against another Eastern team, Cornell.
And interesting that North Dakota's hosting it. And
North Dakota not
wouldn't be
listed.
in it.
I'm sure that's a noticeable absence for you guys.
Yeah,
They're not in there. They're the first out, in fact.
I was waiting for you to say their name. Like, yeah, they host it every year, and they're always in Fargo every year. So that's really strange to have playoff hockey in your arena at this point and not have North Dakota in it.
Well, just look at, you want to put the defending champs back in it with the roster that they have, but they're at 15-3-3 this season. That's just not going to, there's just so many good teams in college hockey, and it's so hard to have them as the last out or the first out, if you want to call it that. But, a team like we were talking about earlier, Air Force, 21-8-5, and they're on the bubble. and there's just so many good teams.
Strength of schedule is really the big thing.
And that's
Absolutely.
the big thing for North Dakota. It's their strength of schedule and how they played this season, how they performed. But it's obviously going to be tough for the Fighting Hawks if they don't even make the tournament after what they did last season.
I mean, pulling up the strength of schedule rankings, you take a look at around college hockey. Boston College's strength of schedule, it's listed at 10th currently. You take a look at a team like Air Force, they're 41st. So that's the big reason why Air Force is even with a team like Boston College. St. Cloud State, they're in contention because they have the 5th toughest schedule in the nation. BU has the 9th toughest schedule in the nation. The number 1, I really haven't seen yet, but there it is. Colorado College with the toughest strength in the nation.
That's tough.
So it's a tough draw for them. But strength of schedule, the CRACH poll, which the USCHO puts out, factors in everything you need to know about tournament rankings. So.
Well, remember we were talking a lot earlier in the year about Boston College and about the fact that they had a big stretch of games against teams that weren't necessarily successful.
Like Colorado College and Holy Cross in a row.
Exactly. So maybe this is finally coming back to bite them, that they're playing consecutive stretches against really good teams, and the true nature of this Eagles team is showing.
Indeed, that could be the case. But that wraps up our talking points. Now we'll move into the BU portion of the show here. We'll start with our weekly wrap-up. Our This Week in College Hockey correspondent Marissa and Jemmy and I sat down earlier this week to break down last weekend's 3-point series for the Terriers over the UNH Wildcats. Welcome into the This Week in College Hockey weekly recap, where today I'm with Marissa and Jemmy. And Marissa, the Terriers getting 3 valuable league points in a weekend series against UNH. It started a bit rocky and ended very, very positively for the Terriers.
Well, the way it trended, it's definitely a good sign that they had some fight in them, and they were able to bounce back from what was just a terrible Beanpot game, and then an awful start in that first period against UNH at the home game on Friday night. It looked like more of the same, and I know I was in the position where I was sitting there watching, thinking, okay, this team has problems now, they've regressed at this point, and the way they bounced back, they were able to tie that game up, get a point in that game, able to score 8 goals on Saturday night. I think it's all positives at this point, because all season long, when I've looked at this team, it's about their response. Because if the difference, there's a fine line between good teams and really good teams, and to me, that's the response. Good teams beat the teams they're supposed to beat, but really good teams respond well in situations of adversity. And this BU team did that once again. They've continued to do it all season. So the problem is they keep putting themselves in that position where they have to respond. So it's up to them heading into this Notre Dame series and heading into postseason play afterwards to not allow it to get to that point.
No, and a team that really found its offensive firepower once again, scoring 12 goals in the series, 15 goals in the week if you count the Beanpot final on Monday. But, a lot to be said about the defensive struggles as well. They allowed 4 goals in both weekend games against UNH. So even though they did get 3 points, a win's a win, even though it's really ugly. But, the defense needs to step up big, especially in this final series coming up against Notre Dame. But against UNH, they showed a lot of promise, I think. You saw players who have struggled lately, like Patrick Harper, find a scoring touch and offensive touch. You saw Kiefer Bellows play probably his best series as a BU Terrier.
I mean, I've criticized Kiefer Bellows more than just about anyone else, so it's good to see him really performing well and really playing like he's capable of playing. I think that's been what the frustration with him has been, is that he has the ability and he just doesn't show up every night. And the fact that he has is a good sign. Patrick Harper, he's a guy I was just recently thinking about, actually. I was like, he hasn't done much in a while. I looked at the stats, and he really had slowed down drastically. So, again, it's good to see him get on the board again, because they've really been mixing up a lot of those lines, and that's because guys like Harper, guys like Bellows, who they need production out of, haven't been getting it. So the fact that those guys showed a promise that they can still find the back of the net, they are still there, they are still a factor in scoring on this team. Again, it's good to see. As far as the defensive struggles, that is really concerning, especially with Brandon Hickey being week to week. And just Brian Diffley being in there, that's about as shaky as they can get. Shane Switzer at times, even though he does have some offensive promise, he doesn't really exactly hold the blue line very well. So there are concerns. And, I mean, at some point, too, Jay Gottinger has seen a ton of shots. He's really young. He's done a great job there, but you don't want a guy like that, a freshman, 18 years old, facing so many shots like that. So that's kind of concerning that the defense in front of him really needs to step up. earlier in the year, I thought this BU team did a really good job blocking shots. They were something like 15th in the nation in shot blocks. I don't know what it is now, but I feel like Ottinger's seen a lot more shots on him lately, and that has to do with just some of the instability of the defense.
Yeah, and one big thing that happened this weekend was a drastic change in the way the lines looked. You saw 2 new-look first lines, a couple of players switched, a third line that really provided some spark with Chase Phelps, Ryan Clunan, and Kiefer Bellows, and then a fourth line that was a bit strange, to say the least, with Gabe Shabbat, Patrick Curry, and the unexpected left wing Doyle Summerby, which to me, I think the experiment failed.
He's not an offensive player.
It did provide a physical presence on offense,
which they do kind of lack with Olsen out.
Yeah, and that it's exactly what they needed. That's exactly what Olsen is meant to provide, and whether or not he's able to play this season still yet to be known. Hopefully Brandon Hickey's back to help the defense this weekend. I know he was week to week and missed the UNH series, and if you put Doyle Summerby back on defense, maybe even throw Shane Switzer on that first line, because I know Switzer can be a physical player. He's shown that physical side of him, and I think there you have it. The defense problem is solved. The problem with the physical presence up front is solved. But, the lines did look good, I have to say. The first line really sort of regained its strength with JFK, Greenway, and Keller. A second line with Bobo Carpenter centering Patrick Harper and Nick Roberto that looked not only solid offensively but very physical. When you had Bobo Carpenter score a power play goal on Friday night, the second line looked amazing on Saturday with Harper getting a pair. So I think the lines are right where you want it to be. I think they figured out what their forwards look like, and it really reflected, especially on Saturday night.
I think so, because I think if you look at that top line with Keller, Greenway, JFK, those are your 3 best forwards, so it makes sense for them to be together. And as far as that second line, Harper gets kind of a spark. I think a lot of that has to do with playing with Bobo Carpenter, because Carpenter's been playing unbelievable lately. I think he's really stepped up, and I think he's had one of the best runs here the last couple of weeks for this Terriers team, so that can only help as well. And Nick Roberto playing there too, they really want him to get going like he was earlier on in the season. So I think they definitely have, at least with those top 2 lines, kind of found what they want to go with.
But one problem I think we found this weekend was that penalties really killed the Terriers, especially early, allowing a pair of power play goals on the weekend, one on Friday night to Michael McNicholas very early in that game, just 3 minutes in, and then another on Saturday to Tyler Kelleher.
Well, it's been their problem all year long with penalties. That's nothing new, and they haven't been able to resolve it, which I think is kind of concerning, because you are a young team, but these guys have been playing Division I college hockey for a while now, even to freshmen. They've played on big stages, so I've never really totally bought the freshman argument to begin with. So looking at these penalties, this should be resolved by now, and it's extremely concerning that it's not. And I don't know who to point the finger at exactly, but if they're not listening in the locker room and they're continuing to go out there and take penalties, and a lot of these penalties aren't from being over-aggressive. It's from standing there and not skating and just moving your stick and tripping a guy or hooking him or something. And away from the puck, these kind of penalties from just not putting in the effort a lot of the time. And that's extremely concerning. And the penalty kill has been good all season, but law of averages, it's not going to be there every time. We've seen it go on spurts where it wasn't as good anyways. So the penalties continue to be a concern, and I think they should be a huge issue until they're resolved, which I don't know if that happens this year.
Yeah, and finally, before we close here, just your overall impressions from Saturday night. 8 goals, they're high for the season. So offensively, you're starting to figure it out at the right time. You got 3 points, valuable 3 points. So, I mean, it's not a sweep, but still, you didn't lose to the team, and you were down 4-2 in the third period on Friday night, looking desperate. But overall, the impressions and takeaways from this series that you found from BU.
Well, points are points and wins are wins, so that's always a positive. But again, scoring 8 goals, that's a really good response. And that's what I take out of it the most, is that they were able to respond and bounce back and score 8 goals after a really bad Monday night game and a game Friday night that, even though they tied, I wasn't overly impressed with that game to begin with, and I didn't like a lot of things. So I think if you want to take that outlook on Saturday night, you can. You can also read it as they gave up 8 goals in a series to a UNH team that they really shouldn't be giving up goals to. And again, that goes back to defense and allowing Ottinger to see too many shots. So there are multiple ways you can read it. But I think heading into this Notre Dame series, the best way they can take it is they responded well, and they need to continue to do so.
And I think the Saturday night win gives them a lot of confidence heading into this final crucial weekend in Hockey
It's
East.
a lot better than another tie or a loss.
And they did clinch a first-round bye in Hockey East with their victory on Friday night in a Providence-Notre Dame tie. They do get Notre Dame this weekend, and it's another big series in Hockey East. But that's going to do it for our weekly wrap-up. Marissa, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
That was the weekly recap with Marissa and Jemmy, as always, our correspondent, and an impressive win over New Hampshire on Saturday night, 8-4. Gives them a lot of confidence heading into a very crucial weekend series, which we've prefaced already, against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at Agganis Arena. And the situation that we alluded to last year that's similar to what we could see this year. Last year, BU was in contention for a first-round bye, and a split against Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, left BU on the outside of the top four looking in. If the Terriers are looking to exact some revenge, they could very well knock off Notre Dame twice and knock them out of contention for a first-round bye.
I think that'd be pretty interesting. And you're right, it brings up a lot of memories of last year where BU won and then lost to end the season. And it put them on a really funky note going into the tournament and then going into the playoffs. It just felt very strange. And so being at home certainly helps the Terriers. They've had a great home record the last few years at Agganis Arena. It could definitely work in their favor. There are a lot of tough pieces for Notre Dame. Cal Peterson is playing pretty good hockey. His save percentage is .926 this year, so he's not doing bad himself. It's going to be one tough ride, but BU's got a chance. I'm not saying they don't. They got a chance.
Yeah, and they do, and look who scored that game-winning goal in that win against Notre Dame last year was Charlie McAvoy, and they have a lot of guys on the team that they did last year. So I mean, not a lot has changed for BU. We could go into this in extent, but I think BU's got a very good chance. But you look at guys on the Notre Dame team, and they've flown completely under the radar this year. We really haven't talked about them too much, but guys like Anders Bjork has just been putting on a show for them. He's 9th in point scoring this year, with 43 points on the season in 31 games. Another Bruins pick, Andrew Ogilvy, Jake Evans, they're all up there in points.
I feel like we
as
say
scoring.
another Bruins pick every time we mention a
I
good
know,
player.
and maybe it's a testament to Don Sweeney. A lot of people don't think he's been doing a good job, but what are they going to say in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, and how about a Buffalo picking Cal Peterson, which, Jake, you just mentioned with his .926 save percentage, 2.09 goals against average. He has 5 shutouts this season. He's proven he can stand on his head, and I think he's a big reason why Notre Dame has been so defensively sound this season. I think it was the 7th best scoring defense in the nation, only allowing 2.2 goals per game this season, which is just incredible the way that they've played. But BU's going to have to really come to play this weekend. They can't do what they did last weekend and tie and win. This is crunch time. There's going to be no second chances in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get a chance to right the wrongs on Saturday night after a tie or a loss on Friday in the NCAA tournament. That's not how that works. So right now, it's crunch time. This is the final dress rehearsal before the real season begins, the postseason. And BU, with 2 home games, really has the advantage here. And if they're the better team, they should win. I know that's a pretty cliche statement, but if they are the better team, then they will win this weekend. They just have to come to play and be prepared to be the better team. It's Notre Dame's final regular season series in Hockey East, so they're going to be hungry to leave their last impression on the conference that they're leaving. But for BU, it's about accomplishing their season-long goal of winning the league.
Yeah.
Something feels weird in this locker room, to be perfectly honest. It stems back from way in the beginning of the year. Coach Quinn has said that something's been off. That these guys are teenagers and their mental psyches are very fragile, and just something has felt off. And this is the weekend, as Dan, you said, it's make it or break it. If you can win these 2 games, possibly win Hockey East, you go into the playoffs with a lot of confidence, and gives me, as someone who watches the team, a lot of confidence about them for the playoffs. if you split, if you lose out, I don't know about their actual hopes in the future. I think that they'd be too fragile and they'd be too broken. And frankly, mentally, they don't feel like they're a really resilient team, which is tough to say because they're a highly skilled team, but they just don't feel like a mentally resilient enough team where if they don't do well this weekend, I don't think they'll do well nationally.
Well, I know they had, the 9th best strength of schedule in the country. BU has, but some of the games that they've lost, you sit back and you say how. That Beanpot game against Harvard, they got completely outmatched by a great Harvard team. But even this weekend, they tie UNH. UNH is, they're not the best team in Hockey East, but you kind of hope that they take that win at Agganis and not tie. But in some of the games that they've lost this season, were against completely inferior teams. I mean, and then you look at Notre Dame, and they've, like we said, they've flown under the radar. And for me in this game, I think, like you said, with the fragility, the teenage minds of this BU hockey team and how fragile they are, if they get into a scrum or something like that. But for me, it's going to be special teams in this game because these two teams are very similar on special teams. BU's number 9th in penalty killing at 85%, and Notre Dame is a 0.1 decimal percentage away from them at number 10. And then with the power play, BU's at 25th and Notre Dame's at 29th. So very similar in terms of statistical special teams play. But, if Notre Dame gets in the Terriers' heads, early on in the game, you never know what's going to happen with the BU penalty kill. They could falter.
Yeah, and I agree with the resiliency statement, but for a player who we've criticized all season long and who we've said isn't a resilient player, it doesn't have the mindset for college hockey, Kiefer Bellows, for him to come out and say last weekend that, we got our swagger back, we're confident for the home stretch of the season in the playoffs, it shows that this team's come a long way. I think that, to me, is really the microcosm of this team maturing over the final month of the season, and I think they've had their fair share of downs. And unlike last year where they just really couldn't come back from that Beanpot loss, I think this year they're in a perfect position to do so. I think you're going to be looking at a team that's much more confident. They've played the best in Harvard, and they're ready for the test of the postseason.
And, they better be ready because, they're going to be traveling at least a little bit more than they have recently since January 21st against Maine.
They haven't left the state.
They haven't left. The only time they left the state was an hour and a half away in Durham, New Hampshire. So and last season everyone was saying, oh, they have 2 away games at Notre Dame. Isn't that kind of a kind of fault in schedule that they have to go over to Notre Dame and they don't have a home and home with a Hockey East team? But now you're saying this is where they need to capitalize. This is where they didn't have that home and home last year. This is where they need to either split or get those 2 wins. And if they get those 2 wins, there's a high possibility that they win the Hockey East.
And one other similarity that I want to point out between these two teams is that they're late bloomers. Mm-hmm. They have great second periods and great third periods. Notre Dame is plus 36 in the last 2 periods of games this season. I mean, that's immense. And you got a BU team that's dominant when they take a lead early on and they score that first goal. They're real tough to beat. This season especially, BU has struggled when allowing the first goal, but succeeded heavily when scoring the first goal. They're 14-2-0 when getting that first goal, and they're 10-0-1 when leading after the first period. Notre Dame, they're putting up similar numbers, 12-4-2 when scoring that first goal, 7-2-1 when leading after one. It's important to get off to a fast start in this game, or both games this weekend for both teams, because if you fall behind early, you're not going to be able to come from behind late.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse that you know the devil you do versus the devil you don't. And if Notre Dame plays such a similar game throughout a full 60 minutes to BU, then it's a good thing, and it's a great way to do some game prep against them. Look at your own tape, frankly, and see, hey, we do this. They do very similar things, and to know how to defend against yourselves is good. But in the end, it could also come back to bite them.
Yeah, and I mean, BU's a plus 27 in the last 2 periods of games. So it's a game that really could be decided on how each team comes out. And BU's been sluggish in the first period of the last 3 or 4 games. So it's important for them to get off to a fast start.
Absolutely. They need to get off to a fast start. as soon as possible, because with the way that the way that both of these teams push in the third period, if you can get a goal on Cal Peterson, 2 goals on Cal Peterson in the first 20 minutes of play, you set yourself up to win.
So, guys, predictions on this weekend series. How's it going to pan out for BU? How's it going to pan out for Hockey East?
I think at best you're going to see a split just because this Notre Dame team is going to come into Agganis, kind of trying to, make their own destiny, like we were saying before. I can't remember what we were saying before. I think it was against the series against BC. And BC has to control their own destiny as well as Notre Dame, and they need to, it's crunch time. And BU and Notre Dame, we can say for hours how similar these two teams are, and I think that's how it's gonna go. They're gonna split this series, and I know both games are at Agganis, but it just comes down to who wants it more. And Notre Dame, you never know with them when they have guys like Anders Bjork going and Ogilvy. So.
No offense to Notre Dame. They're a very good hockey team. They have not gone on the road this season and played as tough a team as BU for a full series. They played BC once at the end of January at Conti Forum, but otherwise they have not gone on a road trip and faced a team as tough as Boston University is to play. I think that BU is going to win out this weekend. I think it's going to end up being really good for this team, a great confidence boost. And then you take a look at the other series, I think that BC and Lowell are going to split. And I think that it's going to end up with BU winning Hockey East regular season titles.
I could see BU winning the regular season title. I don't see a split in the other series. I think Lowell's going to take 3 points from BC, a tie at Conti Forum on Thursday, and a win at Saugus Arena on Friday. For BU, I think they're going to see the exact same result. They've only swept 3 teams this year, BC and Maine and Massachusetts. Maine and Massachusetts are 11 and 12 respectively in Hockey East. BC is 1, but really struggling down the stretch and playing like as if they're in 10th place, just not being able to get any wins. They have taken 3 points from 3 other teams in Hockey East. New Hampshire, they've taken 3 points from now I'm blanking on this. They're taking 3 points from New Hampshire, from Northeastern, and from wow, I'm blanking. They've taken 3 points from Northeastern. Only 2. I'm thinking this weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
3 points from Northeastern and UNH. They've only been swept once by Merrimack, which was kind of a series that was
Providence. I think is the other team they're thinking of.
There you go, Providence, and they only got swept by Merrimack, which is indicative of a team in the dog days of the season, really struggling and looking for a break after playing a lot of hockey in a quick succession. But BU's going to take, I think, 3 points from this weekend. You'll probably see another Friday night tie, which is kind of the thing we've seen all season long, where they come out on Friday night and just aren't ready, and they end up saving it late. And I think on Saturday they're going to walk away with a big win. It's going to be a big win, not like a 3-2. It's going to be like 5-6-1. They're going to make a statement on Friday night. Whether they win the league or not, still up for grabs. If they finish tied with BC, they win on tiebreaker. But for the Terriers, I think 3 points is in the bag this weekend. But that really is it's all coming down to this weekend. Our games of the week in the NCAA: BU Notre Dame and UMass Lowell BC. Of course, goes without saying. As mentioned earlier, the ECAC on Saturday: Harvard against St. Lawrence and Cornell against Union. Cornell, Union, and Harvard all in contention for the title. In the Big Ten, Minnesota against Wisconsin. In the NCHC, St. Cloud against Denver. And then in the WCHA, despite it being decided already, Bemidji State taking on Minnesota State, 2 of the top dogs in that tournament, which really could be a preview of the playoff tournament title game coming up in March. Atlantic Hockey, Air Force against Sacred Heart is also going to be something to watch. Not really our notable game of the week, but something to watch in terms of Air Force being able to clinch the league. Guys, what are you looking forward to the most?
Darren, you talked about earlier in the show how no matter what, you're looking at the ECAC games this weekend.
I'll skip my turn at the end here.
I gotta watch Hockey East. They're 4 amazing teams in contention for the title. Regardless of who wins, it's going to be one heck of a battle. It's going to come down to the last minute of every 60 minutes this weekend, the last 120 minutes, It's going to come right down to the wire. It's going to be a lot of fun and maybe anxiety-inducing for every one of these teams. Who knows?
And, I'm going to kind of go out of the box on this one. You shared with us the NCAA bracketology. If you said St. Cloud might be playing BU, I'm going to try to get my hands on that game and try to watch St. Cloud, see what they're playing like. And they're playing Denver, and Denver is always a good show.
Yeah, and then the ECAC on Saturday night. It's going to be decided between those two games. Cornell and Union going at it. It could be a game where the winner takes the ECAC championship that night. You never know how anything could pan out this weekend, but definitely interesting series to watch. That's going to do it, though, for episode 18 of This Week in College Hockey. Join us next week where we'll be breaking down the opening weekend of the playoffs. We'll have a lot to talk about considering we will be taking a hiatus the week after for spring break, guys. What are your plans for spring break? Anything big?
I'm going home. I'm going to sleep for 7 days straight. Maybe going to New York City for a day with my family, but I just plan on sleeping and resting and getting pumped for the rest of the season.
Hibernation. Good. Jordan.
Jamaica, baby. I'll be in Jamaica the whole week. I've never been there before, so should be good.
All right,
Maybe
Mom.
I'll meet one of them. Yeah, maybe I'll meet one of the Marleys. You never know.
Oh,
You
yeah.
never know. I'll be in Florida going to Disney.
There you go.
Basic, real.
Love it.
So-
really
I've
basic.
I've
So-
never been to Disney. I've always wanted to go to
You've
Disney.
never been
but
to
I've never
Disney?
been.
Really?
How
Oh,
about
it's a
I'm
great
jealous.
place to be. So, hibernation, relaxation on a beach, relaxation at Disney. That sounds like a great break for all of us.
It does, but we will be away from. That does mean we'll be away from college hockey, but we will still keep our eyes on the prize, really looking at the playoffs. So do follow us on Twitter at WTBU Sports, our associated Twitter. We'll be tweeting about BU Hockey East playoff picture, anything else that comes to mind. Definitely something to look forward to. But we will be back next week, though, with an episode 19 of This Week in College Hockey, where the postseason does begin. So for my partners, Jake Reiser and Jordan Tebow, our correspondent, Marissa Ingemi, this is Dan Schulman signing off.